Hey everybody, Tyson's Honor here. I believe we are live. Welcome to the Daily Dose of Awesome. Today we are going to talk about what should I talk about in my marketing. I got a question from a guy recently who said, Tyson, when I watch your content, he's talking about on my channel, because of course I've got my own channel in addition to sometimes when I help out Elite Marketing Pro. Hey guys, would you let me know, by the way, if you can hear me? I am recording. I'll tell you what we're talking about here in a minute. We're going to talk about what you should talk about in your marketing. If you are at a loss for content ideas, I'm going to give you a ton of ideas for content today. But I want to make sure, first of all, that everybody can hear me. I am seeing some people logging in. Would you guys give me some thumbs up? And I'm also going to check over here on my iPad on a separate device to make sure I can hear you. I'm doing things a little bit different today because I am out here in California, in San Francisco, visiting my sister. There we go. I can see myself, and I'm going to bring up the comment feed, and hopefully I can check your comments. Hey, Brandy. Hey, Becky. Hey, Jackie, Marge, Jennifer. All right, awesome. So you guys can hear me. That's great. So welcome to the Daily Dose of Awesome. What we're going to talk about, if you just joined us, is what you should talk about in your marketing. So if you're creating your own content, let's start with that. How many of you guys out there are creating your own branded content, whether that's you're doing Facebook Lives like what I'm doing right now, or maybe YouTube videos, or you're writing your own blog posts or emails, whatever that might be. Drop me a Y in the comment box below to let me know if you are in fact doing your own content. That would be helpful to know. And then what I'm going to do is I want to help you, because I get a lot of people that ask, Tyson, I would love to do my own content, or I'm doing it, but I always seem to be out of ideas, or I never can figure out exactly what I want to talk about, or I'm always, at a loss for words. Well, after you watch today's Daily Dose of Awesome, hopefully you will never be out of ideas for content again. You will have an endless stream of content ideas. I'm going to tell you how I do it. And how you can implement that in your business as well. So I am seeing Wise. So Nicole is doing her own branded content. Terry, Jennifer, Jill, excellent. And if you're not, you should start considering it because it's one of the main things that's going to make people want to buy from you over your competition. So let me ask this, and then I'm going to give you the secrets. Drop me a number one in the comment box below if you have ever struggled with ideas for what to talk about in your own content. Let me know that as well. That would be helpful to know. And then really the secret to coming up with endless content ideas is the two I's. It is immersion and interaction. Okay, and I'll explain what I mean, and then I'm going to give you some examples of where I get my content ideas from. So, by the way, I am out here. I'm out here in California. It's beautiful out here. The weather is great, and I stepped outside. We're visiting my sister who lives in this apartment back here behind me, and we're hanging out for the week with my kids, and I stepped outside to do this because it's a little loud in there with all the kids. But by immersion and interaction, what I mean by that is, first of all, if you are at a loss if you don't know what to talk about, what that could mean is that you simply don't know your market well enough. You don't know their pains, you don't know their problems, you don't know their struggles, you don't know their goals, you don't know their objections, you don't know their frustrations, you don't know what their desires are. Because if you know all of those things, if you know their goals and problems and pains and what misconceptions they have in your market and all of those kinds of things, you really have a wealth of things to talk about to your market. But the question I get is, well, Tyson, but how do I do it in a way that I'm not, there's only so many objections. There's only so many pains. Like, my market has maybe 4 main pains. How do I make different content all the time without it sounding like I'm talking about the same thing over and over and over and over again? Well, I'll give you the secret to how I do that and how I frame different content differently. But you first have to immerse yourself in your market. How do you do that? Well, I do it by, I try to read something every day, whether it's, for me, my market is business owners, people, who want to build their businesses online. So I'm reading marketing books. I'm reading blogs. I'm immersing myself in the content that either my market is in and I'm hanging out where they're hanging out, or I'm reading the kind of content, or I'm watching the kind of videos that I know would help my market. And that then gives me ideas for content. Now, does that mean that I should blatantly swipe someone else's content and pass it off word for word as my own? No, absolutely not. That's not what I'm suggesting you should do at all. But rather, what you should do is is this helpful, by the way? Give me some thumbs up, some hearts in the box, if this is helpful to you so far. And then I'm gonna tell you how I literally have enough content for probably 2 years worth, and I'll tell you how I do that. But I'm not saying that you should plagiarize or that you should take somebody's content word for word. Put your own unique spin on it. If you are taking an idea that was specifically learned from someone else, it's okay for you to say, hey, I was reading this book this morning by so-and-so, and I got a great tip out of it that I think will really help you to solve XYZ problem. That doesn't actually diminish your authority at all. It actually establishes more authority because it shows that you're investing in your knowledge, in your skills, and in your education. And the way that I built my entire business when I was first starting out was with a simple 3-step process that I call the S3. The letter S, and the number 3 strategy, which I say stands for study, share, suggest. So that was the first way that I started coming up with content ideas, was studying the kinds of things that would make me better at my craft and immersing myself, whether that was magazines, blogs, videos I might be watching, articles, and so forth. And then I would share something that I learned, but I would put my own unique spin, my own personality into it. And if it was appropriate to cite the source, I would say where I learned that from. And then I would share, so I shared it, and then I would suggest what the next thing is they should do, that's the call to action. So, hey, if you like this content, I would suggest that you check out XYZ. And that's how or I would suggest you go download this free thing. And that's how I started generating my first leads online, was study, share, suggest. And I always came up with content ideas for that. Now, that's a great way to get started, but here's why I say that if you do this right, you will have an endless stream of content ideas. Because once you start interacting and you start doing your own branded content, here's what will happen. It's really amazing. New ideas will spawn from the original idea that you just did. Because as you start immersing yourself in your market, I'm sure most of you have probably heard of the reticular activator. If you don't know what that is, it's like your brain starts to become, it's like you got antennas on top of your head, and you start to become in tune with certain things that you never would have noticed before. Like you buy a new car, and then all of a sudden you drive that car down the road and you start seeing that same car everywhere. Well, did everybody else buy that car the same time as you? No, of course not. The car has always been there out on the road. It's just your mind is now in tune to see it. Well, once you start immersing yourself in your market, and you start interacting, what will happen is people will start asking you questions. You'll be engaged in conversations, and all of a sudden a new content idea will form. You'll see things in your everyday life that give you an idea for content that you never would have noticed before. And I'll give you a few great examples of this that I've done in my own business. So, like a couple of years ago, go if you want a good example of how I did this, go type in a Google search when we're done with this YouTube this Facebook Live today. Do a YouTube search for Tyson Zahner, my name, Kung Fu Panda marketing tips. Okay, Kung Fu Panda, like the movie, marketing tips. And my son and I went to go see Kung Fu Panda, and while we were there, just because I had been immersed in my market, the Master Sifu was giving Kung Fu Panda all of these tips. I was like, hey, that's a great little tip that I could share with my audience. And because I'm positioning it as, hey, marketing tips that I learned from Kung Fu Panda, I can talk about the same problems and the same objections and frustrations over and over, but it's coming from a different angle. It seems like it's new content, when in many ways I often talk about the same thing over and over, but I'm positioning it differently because it was like, hey, I was watching Kung Fu Panda and Master Sifu said this, and it gave me an idea that reminded me about X, Y, and Z, and then I'll use that as a jumping off point to talk about in my marketing. So if you want a real world example of how I do that, you can just do a Google search for Kung Fu Panda, Tyson Zahner marketing tips, and you'll find that blog post out on one of my old blogs. It was a couple years ago when Kung Fu Panda 3 came out, but like, I took my kids to go see Cars 3 recently, which was in the theaters last week, I guess. And while I was there, first of all, I don't try and remember all of these things, right? People will say, Tyson, how much time do you spend coming up with content ideas? Well, there's two answers to that. The first answer is I spend a whole of about 2 minutes coming up with a content idea. But then the second part of that answer, which is going to seem totally like it contradicts my first answer, is that I spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week coming up with content ideas. Let me explain what I mean. there are content ideas all around me, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I see content because my reticular activator is in motion and it constantly notices things that I never would have noticed. So 24 hours a day, I find things for content, not necessarily because I'm looking for them, but just because my mind is in tune. And then what I do is I pull out my phone and I have Evernote on my phone and I quickly either dictate if I'm driving or I type it in with my thumbs, a new content idea into my Evernote. Well, then when I am ready to do a new blog post or write an email or a Facebook Live or whatever, I don't have to spend more than 2 minutes simply scrolling through my Evernote and looking and going, oh, there was an idea from Cars 3 the other day, right? So literally from Cars 3, I could do a whole week worth of content from little quotes that were in Cars 3. I wrote down a few of them here. I think Lightning McQueen asked the trainer girl, he said, how did you know, or she said to Lightning, how did you know that you could do it, that you could race? And he said, well, I just guess I never thought that I couldn't do it. And so then they went into this talk about how she always dreamed small and he never really had those limitations. Well, that would be an easy thing for me to talk about because I know that my market struggles with the internal struggle in their mind, but because I can position it from a quote that I heard in Cars 3, it sounds like new content and it's fun and it's interesting and it's relevant because it's based off of, pop culture. So I get ideas from pop culture. I get ideas from the news. I saw something in the news recently about a guy who the title of the article said something to the effect of never go to bed angry. And this guy had been so overworked. He came home and his wife was arguing with him. She said, you're working 16-hour days and it's like running you into the ground. You shouldn't be doing this. And he ended up sleeping on the couch that night and he died in his sleep. It was like, I was like, holy cow, this was a news story that I saw. Well, how could I talk about my own market's problems and frustrations about being worked into the ground by tying in that news story? So I might take a news story. I might take a conversation. Here's another idea. My wife and I had a conversation the other day. We were sitting down at dinner and she was scrolling through the menu and she said, she said, it's amazing. I still look for the cheapest thing on the menu. She said, I guess it's just been ingrained in me since I was a kid. She said, even though, you do well with your business and we don't have to, I could order the most expensive thing, but she said there's something just kind of ingrained in me. And I asked her, I said, well, what happened when you were a kid? And she told me this story about something that happened when she was a little girl. And that was a new content idea. How many of my prospects are sabotaging their business success, or they don't believe that they can succeed because of something that happened in their history? Well, I can tell that story that happened with my wife, and then I can tie that in to a lesson. So first thing you have to do, this is helpful. Is anybody getting helpful advice from this? Let me look at some of the comments, and then I'll give you I'm seeing lots of thumbs up and hearts. This is so great. Kung Fu Panda movies are the best self-development material ever. I agree. Great idea. Keep a running. Yes. So I keep a running list of content ideas in my Evernote, and then I never have to think. So here's what's hard. It's hard for you to just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write content today. Let me think about what I should talk about. That's hard. And I will struggle I'll sit there for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour or more with writer's block. Well, this is why when things happen in your life that just bring you content ideas, write them down in Evernote. And then even if, here's a really good tip. Even if I don't know how I'm going to use the content, I'll still write it down. If something interesting or weird happened, and a great example of this was the last time we were out here in San Francisco visiting my sister, we were driving down the Embarcadero, is that what it's called? Embarcadero? I forget the name of the highway. But anyway, we were driving down the road, and we see this naked guy, literally 100% naked. I mean, everything, flapping in the wind, except for a top hat on. He wasn't wearing anything. I think he had a bow tie and a top hat. And my kids were in the car. It was this weird experience. And I didn't know how I was going to use that as a piece of content. So I just wrote it down, right? Naked man walking down the streets of San Francisco. And sometimes the idea for how I'm going to tie it into my marketing comes from just talking about it. Other times it comes from just writing out the story. And then all of a sudden a tie-in will come to me as I start to take action. Sometimes you just have to step out in faith and know that eventually the idea will come to me. Well, for me, it came to me because I started talking to my sister's boyfriend who's lived out here in San Francisco. And I said, that was really weird. Why was nobody else as shocked by that as I was? My kids and I were like, holy crap, naked guy walking down the street. And the other people were walking next to him like this was an everyday occurrence. And the conversation with him gave me the insight to how I could tie that story or that incident into my marketing. He basically said, man, when you've lived out here this long, you see so much crazy stuff that it just becomes, you become immune to it. And I went, there's my hook, there's my angle. And so I wrote this email about how, I saw this naked guy and how everybody was immune to it. And then I went on to say, it kind of reminds me of how so many people are flashing cash and cars, and they're saying, hey, look at how amazing my life is, with all this hyped up marketing message. And prospects online have become immune to that hypey message, and what they really want is value. They want real world content. They want helpful advice. And that was my tie-in to my marketing message. But it was spawned by an idea from my regular everyday life. So here's what I will end you with. Guys, once again, I'm seeing lots of hearts, lots of thumbs up. Apparently this has been helpful, valuable information today. So great that you did this topic. It's exactly what I needed, said Michelle. Great stuff, says Eric. Awesome. So I'll leave you with this. First thing you need to do is understand this. Write down, what are my prospects' problems? What are their frustrations? What are their questions? What are the misconceptions or myths that they might have? What are their goals and desires? What are their objections that they might have towards, buying my thing or opting in for whatever it is that I do? Because you almost always want to find a way to tie in whatever the thing was that happened, whether it's a story, a news story, something you read in a book. You almost always want to find a way to tie it in to what your prospect is interested in, instead of just saying, hey, I watched Cars 3 today, and here's an interesting quote. Instead, like for me, instead of saying, I'm looking at that quote I gave you earlier. How did you know you couldn't do it? She said to Lightning McQueen. Well, I guess I just never thought I couldn't. So instead of just saying interesting quote from Cars 3, I would find a way to tie that in to my prospects' pains and problems. And I might say, are you sabotaging your success in your business? Here's a reason why you might be struggling. Well, and then I can use that quote from Cars 3 to make my message entertaining and relevant and fun and drive home the point. Does that make sense? So always make sure you first understand your market's pains, problems, frustrations, questions, myths, objections, all of that stuff. And then just have your reticular activator in motion and be writing down all of the things, the ideas that come to you just from your everyday interactions. The more you interact, because here's what happens. I will do a Facebook Live and somebody will ask a question or make a comment on a Facebook Live that will now spawn the idea for another new piece of content. And as soon as I get off of this Facebook Live, I'll scroll through the comments and I'll go into my Evernote and I'll type out new content ideas based on today's comments and interactions. And then I'll do that again. That piece of content that I create off of today's comment will then spark new conversation that will now be new content ideas, okay? So that's why I say you can literally come up with an endless stream of content ideas, but it requires you to first step out in faith and just start creating content, look for ideas around you, and the more you do this, the more the ideas will actually come to you, and you don't even have to look for them. So hopefully you guys got value out of this. I'm going to look one more time at the comments. And then we're going to log off for today. So thanks for being here. And thanks to, by the way, thank you to everybody, like Bill and Michelle and Kate and I know Whit and Carrie for stepping in. It's just amazing that we've got such an amazing community here at Elite Marketing Pro to step in and do these daily doses of awesome while Fernie was off doing his thing. And I know he's going to be back real soon, and you guys are going to love seeing him. I'm sure you've missed him, but I've been honored that they asked me to fill in. So thank you for being here and listening today. Hopefully you got value out of it. If you did, please share it around. If you know somebody that would get value out of this, don't hoard the value. Share the value around. Not only will it'll help other people, but it'll make you look cool by association. So share it around. Give it some thumbs up and some hearts and some likes, and give me a few more comments as we finish up today. Heather said, awesome, Tyson, valuable training. Fabulous. Thank you. This community is amazing, said Jennifer. So good, Tyson. I appreciate you. Thanks, buddy. You're welcome, Fernie. My pleasure. So thanks again, guys, for being here. I will see you guys hopefully in the near future. And if I'm not training, I will definitely be on here listening to Fernie when he does the next Daily Dose of Awesome. So for now, have an amazing day, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye.